words that you have spoken, promises that burn within my heart, have now grown dim. With a doubting heart I follow the paths of earthly wisdom. Forgive me for my unbelief, renew the fire again. Lord, have mercy, Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have mercy, Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me. I've built an altar where I've worshipped things of man. I've taken journeys that have drawn me far from you. Now I am returning to your mercies ever flowing. Pardon my transgressions, help me love you again. Lord, have mercy, Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have mercy, Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me. I have longed to know you and all your tender mercies, like a river of forgiveness, ever flowing without end. So I bow my heart before you in the goodness of your presence, your grace forever shining like a beacon in the night. Lord, have mercy, Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have mercy, Christ, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on me. Lord, have mercy, Lord, have mercy on us. 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 Lord, have mercy, Lord, have mercy on us.
Thank you, Dave, for that. Good morning. Welcome to everyone at Nexus. We've got another fun Summer of Wisdom morning. Today, we are exploring humility, and I have Erica and Peter along with me as guests to provide some reflections on humility. So let's get right to it this morning. I'm going to hand it off to Erica. Erica, take it away as we talk and explore humility.
Good morning, Nexus. I'm Erica, and I'm excited to be participating in this Summer of Wisdom series. When Brad asked me to offer wisdom on a topic, my first thought was, I should speak on humility, because I am very good at it. I'm kidding, of course, but humility is strange like that. It seems that there's very little of it in our world today. Sure, there's lots of humble bragging, false modesty, and thinly veiled arrogance, because checking our ego is the polite thing to do. But I think it's also a way of saying, look at what a good person I am, even if I'm not saying it. I always feel like my attempts at humility are tainted by the knowledge that people will like me better if I'm not too proud of my own achievements. And there's a good reason for my feeling that way. For instance, there's lots of warnings about arrogance and pride in the Bible. And we have them in modern culture too. Our most common one, that pride goes before a fall. Personally, I hate arrogance in people. It completely rubs me the wrong way. This attitude of superiority and of being set apart, being too good for the rest of us. I revel in the justice of people being put in their place. But the wisdom I found on humility puts us all in our place. The first is from the book of Proverbs, chapter 22, verse 2. It says, "The rich and poor have all this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all." The second is from the Haggadah, which is the Jewish order of the Passover service. It reads, "Man was created on the sixth day so that he could not be boastful, since he came after the flea in the order of creation." Difficult words to stomach. These proverbs remind us that we're all the same. We're all creatures made by God. But we like to assert ourselves as special and a cut above the rest. One of my earliest childhood memories is from an attempt at leadership in kindergarten. My teacher had momentarily stepped out of the room, and the classroom descended into chaos. No one was following the rules. There was noise and mess everywhere. And as the oldest of 4 children, I had some experience in leadership, or bossiness, and I stepped up to the task. I raised my voice with all the authority my 6-year-old self could muster and said, "Okay, everyone, listen to me." At that moment, my teacher walked back into the room. "No, Erica," she said, "everyone should be listening to me." I had tried to distinguish myself, tried to rise above, and I was pushed back down into the crowd of snotty-nosed kindergartners. And as a species, we do this all the time, not only trying to lord it over our fellow human beings, but over all of creation. And both proverbs remind us of our place as part of the throng, not only of humans, but of creatures. And another bit of wisdom to add to the mix is from Eugene Peterson. He says, "The Latin words humus, soil/earth, and homo, human being, have a common derivation from which we get our word humble. This is the Genesis origin of who we are, dust. Dust that the Lord God used to make us a human being. If we cultivate a lively sense of our origin and nurture a sense of continuity with it, who knows, we may also acquire humility. We all come from the earth. We are creatures. By lording it over the world and other species, we actively deny our origins. The results aren't just people going around thinking they are the best thing since Netflix, but more serious consequences like environmental destruction, slavery, ongoing systems of oppression and violence against our home and our neighbors. I need more of this kind of humility, the kind that reminds me that I am inherently connected to the earth and other beings. I'm not better than any of them, but I'm also not alone. And that this connection comes with responsibility, to listen, to learn, and to care.
Everyone around us wants our attention, and they want it now. Our society, our culture, and our community, they move at the speed of light, never stopping to catch up with the challenges left in their wake. And trust me, there are always challenges when something moves at that speed. Even light is subject to relativity. There's no better time to watch the waves try to catch up to the light than during this global pandemic. Many of us have been seriously inconvenienced, forced to stay home with the kids who are suddenly out of school, trying to hold it together long enough to make it to the makeshift office in the half-finished bathroom downstairs. With pillow forts made in the living room, we tuck ourselves away in the back, hoping the kids don't injure themselves on the overturned couch, the toilet seat making for a very uncomfortable office chair. With no sense of when a vaccine will develop for this wretched virus, we're forced to plug through, trying to hold it all together. If we're one of the lucky ones, we'll have an office to return to. Others of us have had the unfortunate experience of being laid off over Zoom, which sounds like my worst nightmare. Still others of us have become sick, worried about when we'll be able to see our loved ones again. And when the test comes back positive, we're not necessarily surprised. We've been wheezing for days, and our sense of taste is all but gone. Again, if we're lucky, we'll be able to weather the virus at home. If not, it's a visit to the ICU and a ventilator. Something I can tell you from personal experience is a terrible way to pass the days. Whoever we are, the pandemic has brought the speed of the world into focus for many of us. In the book of Proverbs, Lady Wisdom, as she was known to the pagans, says, "The wealth of the rich is their fortified city. They imagine it a wall too high to scale. Before a downfall, the heart is haughty, but humility comes before honor. To answer before listening, that is both stupid and rude." I don't know if anyone else thinks this way, but I think the Anglo-Saxon, straight, white, middle-aged Western Christian male might fit the description of the rich in their fortified cities, a demographic not unlike many of us in our faith community. Centuries of dogma have been woven together with careful scripts, words of opium covered in honey to make them go down easier. Cloaked in the name of eternal salvation, theology like the doctrine of discovery became codified in law. With the view that God had given them, European men, terra nullius, empty land, many of these men tried to forcibly convert Turtle Island's original inhabitants. When that didn't work the way they wanted, they declared a genocide, the immortal words, "Kill the Indian," dripping off the red-stained tongue of John A. Macdonald and onto the founding documents of a country called Canada. 153 years later, our hearts haughty with white supremacy, the walls of our fortified cities are beginning to fall. White Christian men, as masters of culture, sport, society, law, politics, sex, and education, for more than a millennia have become so used to pointing out the speck in the eye of the other that they have failed to see the log of pride in their own eye. Of course, it doesn't have to be this way. Again, Lady Wisdom comes to us with but a few simple words as remedy. Humility comes before honor. Failing to listen is both stupid and foolish. In the wake of the Black Lives Matter protests, I have been taken by the word listen. It's one of the things that Black, Indigenous, and people of color have been asking white people to do for some time now. As a verb, it is an action word, something that requires engagement and participation. It's not something that sits back on the couch, waiting for us to finish combing our long COVID hair. Simultaneously, I watch as white people everywhere get their knickers in a knot about structural systemic racism. Each one of us afraid that if we admit Black people are right about police brutality, if Indigenous people are right about the residential school system, we will have blood on our hands. Moreover, so many of us fear the work that comes from admitting that everything we were taught in Sunday school class and civics class was wrong. So we come up with reasons to avoid confronting the truth, knowing that if we admit they are right, we'll have to do something about it. The wall of white supremacy is so dominant, so high, we can't imagine it any other way. We are scared that we will have to act, and we will have to change it. And make no mistake, we will change it. But first, my fellow white people, comes the action of listening. Before we are given the honor of joining in the revolution, because that's what it is, an honor, we must be humbled, brought low. Amy Lawton, a graduate of Iliff School of Theology in Chicago, writes in a blog post I happened upon not too long ago, "Listening is humility when it relinquishes dominance." Listening isn't asking your BIPOC friends to explain racism to you for the 100th time. It's going down to the library, doing your own research, and calling out your own implicit bias, recognizing the hard work of activists who are literally fighting for their lives. Listening isn't suggesting that we add a black person to the Waterloo Police Services Board, as our regional chair did just a few weeks ago. Listening isn't telling our black friends that they should protest peacefully. Colin Kaepernick did that, and he was blackballed from the NFL. What if black people are right when they tell us that police have it out for them based on the color of their skin? We need merely to look at the data, which shows them correct again and again. What if Indigenous people are right when they say that the land upon which we're worshiping has been stolen from underneath them? That white people like you and I are occupiers, here by the force of religion, at the blade of a knife and the end of a gun. Right now, I hear my BIPOC friends asking their white friends for one simple action. Listen to us, they beg. Let the cities of the rich fall. What if Waterloo Region gave back land stolen in the name of Jesus, returned it to the Anishinaabe without strings, and remained unwanted guests squatting on their land? Let the wall of white supremacy crumble, and may it never, ever return.
All a person's ways seem pure to them, but motives are weighed by the Lord. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. You know, the word purity has a lot of baggage, but I want to suggest this morning that it's important for us to understand purity in order to pursue humility. Why? Well, I think to be pure of heart is to see others as God sees them, as well as being honest about our own shortcomings or sin, you could say. To pursue humility and purity of heart is to do the difficult work of being honest with who we are, not just how we act or how we speak, but what motivates our intentions and actions internally. Humility, in my mind, is ultimately an internal work. Bertrand Russell, in his book, The Conquest of Happiness, he says this: if we were all given by magic the power to read each other's thoughts, I suppose the first effect would be almost all friendships would be dissolved. Oh, that cracks me up, but I think it gets and points to what I mean here. It points to a rather uncomfortable reality, if what he's saying is true. But I think what Russell is pointing to is this: if our inner motivations and intentions and feelings were ever exposed, well, it wouldn't be pretty. If we knew what others were thinking about us, if we knew what actually drove people and motivated them, if we were aware of their intentions toward us, well, like Russell suggests, friendship might be hard. Our inner worlds are a complex mess of desires and motivations. And I think this is a call of humility and purity of heart. Sure, we can say or do all the right things in front of others, but at the same time, we can be arrogant, predatory, and just plain cruel towards others inside our heads. You know, many of the virtues, of course, ask us to clean up the way we act and behave, but I think humility asks us to clean up what is happening inside of us. And I think Jesus cleverly gets at this with one of his parables. It's an off-sided story around humility, but I think it can be easy to miss the genius of it and its powerful lesson. In the story, Jesus tells the tale of two men who are praying. Now, the first man is a devout Pharisee. He speaks and acts in all the right ways. He takes living virtuously and justly very seriously. And so in prayer, he thanks God that he's such a good moral man. But then, noticing another man nearby, a tax collector, he also thanks God that he's not as, stupid or as corrupt as the tax collector beside him. Now, in truth, the second man is indeed a man of questionable character, but in his prayer, he owns that. With honesty and without trying to rationalize himself, he just owns it. He owns his sins and faults and humbly asks God to forgive him. And of course, we know how Jesus assesses the two men. The man who owned his stuff was seen as justified before God. But perhaps the story is not so simple as we imagine. You see, Jesus, we are told this story for those who look down on others. And so I think the simplicity of the story is actually a ruse. It's a way to catch us with our own guards down, because the story being so simple and obvious, our reaction to the story is perhaps the real point. Because we easily spot the difference in the story between pride and humility. It's just so glaringly obvious how arrogant the Pharisee is. But then, I would venture to guess that 98% of us hearing the story spontaneously sort of nurse this feeling. Oh, I know people exactly like that Pharisee, and thank God I'm not like them. And I think this is the genius of the story if we pay attention not just to the words Jesus is saying, but what it does inside of us. The story, because of its simplicity, it exposes us, the listeners, as the Pharisee. It conjures up in our mind images of people we know who we think are a little too full of themselves. We might think, oh yeah, this Pharisee guy, oh boy, does he sound familiar? Sounds like every Republican fundamentalist Christian I know. And gee, thank God I'm not in that camp anymore. Or it could be even the opposite. It might be like, oh, I know these type. I know these Pharisee type. Those bleeding heart liberals who think they're the moral police. Thank God I don't sound like them. And there's the cleverness of the story, because hearing such a simple story that seems so obvious, so black and white, pride sneaks past our defenses and catches us playing the role of the Pharisee. You know, the truth is it's not easy to be humble. We use an array of measuring sticks in life, but we all nurse inside of us a sense that we're at least not as bad as those folk. Insert whoever that might be for you. How do we protect against that? How do we earnestly pursue humility and purity of heart? Well, I think the tax collector, of course, shows us the way, honestly admitting we're sinners. And granted, I know people don't love hearing that word anymore. Call it what you want to call it. The tax collector just owns it. His sins, his faults, all of it. And I would suggest that's the one place pride can't sneak past us. I think there's one posture where pride can't get around our defenses, and that's when we're truly standing inside of our own sinfulness, inside our own faults and shortcomings. You know, I once heard a Roman Catholic priest who has been hearing confessions for over 50 years now. This guy, over 50 years, he's been taking people's confessions. And I once heard him say this: I can say without hesitation that people are at their very best when they are honestly confessing their own shortcomings. When we are genuinely standing inside the recognition of our own sin, we judge no one. You know, we aren't responsible for how we look or our genetic makeup. We aren't responsible for our ethnicity or the color of our skin. We aren't responsible for the kind of family or neighborhood or culture we were raised in. We aren't responsible for what happened to us as children. There's a whole lot in life that we're not responsible for, but there are places where we must take responsibility. And that's for our sin, the ways that we err, the ways that we see others, our intentions, and what truly motivates us. If we want to be humble, we would do well to stand before God in honesty about them more often. Thanks, Nexus, for joining us this morning. Thanks, Peter and Erica, for those reflections. I hope you will join us for our Zoom discussion happening now. You can click on the link below. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and like as well. And great seeing you all. Hope you're having a great summer. For now, go in peace.